Sarah Martinez had seen enough violence in her 20-year career as a security officer at the Orbital Defense Station to last 3 lifetimes. Tonight was supposed to be different. Tonight was supposed to be her last shift before retirement. A quiet farewell to the metal corridors and humming machinery that had been her world since she was barely 22 years old. The station floated in the cold darkness between Earth and Mars, a massive structure that served as humanity's first line of defense against threats from the outer colonies. Sarah walked her usual patrol route through the lower decks, her worn boots making soft echoes against the polished floor. The familiar weight of her security badge felt heavier tonight, knowing she would never wear it again after sunrise. She had planned to spend these final 8 hours quietly, maybe sharing coffee with the night crew, telling stories about the old days when the station was new and everything seemed possible. Instead, the emergency alarm began screaming through the corridors at exactly 0200 hours. Red lights flashed along the walls as Sarah's radio crackled to life. The voice of Commander Hayes, the station's security chief, cut through the static with barely controlled panic. All security personnel to emergency stations. We have multiple breaches on levels 7 through 12. Unknown hostiles have boarded the station. This is not a drill. Sarah's blood turned to ice. In 20 years, they had never had a real security breach. Pirates occasionally tried their luck with supply ships, and there were always rumors of rebel activity in the outer colonies, but the Orbital Defense Station was considered untouchable. Its location was classified, its defenses legendary. She ran toward the nearest emergency station, her hand instinctively checking her sidearm. As she rounded the corner into the main corridor of Level 9, she stopped dead in her tracks. Bodies lay scattered across the floor. Security officers she had worked with for years, people she considered family, were sprawled in pools of their own blood. Their weapons had been taken, their communication devices destroyed. Whatever had done this was thorough, professional, and absolutely ruthless. Sarah pressed herself against the wall and activated her emergency beacon. The device was designed to send a distress signal directly to Earth Defense Command, bypassing all local communication systems. If the station's regular communications had been compromised, this might be their only hope of getting help. A sound made her freeze. Footsteps, multiple sets, moving with military precision down the corridor toward her position. She peered around the corner and saw them clearly for the first time. They were human, but not like any human she had ever seen. Each one stood nearly 7 feet tall, their bodies covered in some kind of advanced armor that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Their faces were hidden behind helmets with glowing red displays, and they moved with the coordinated efficiency of a special forces unit. Sarah counted 12 of them as they spread out through the corridor, checking each body, each door, each potential hiding place. They communicated through hand signals, never speaking aloud. Whatever they were looking for, they were taking no chances of missing it. One of them stopped directly in front of her hiding spot. Through the reflection in a nearby control panel, Sarah could see the soldier's head turning slowly in her direction. The helmet's display pulsed brighter, and she realized with growing horror that it was scanning for life signs. The soldier raised his weapon, a rifle unlike anything in Earth's military arsenal, and began walking toward her position. Sarah knew she had seconds before discovery. Her 20 years of training kicked in, and she made a decision that would change everything. Instead of running, instead of hiding, she stepped out into the open corridor with her hands raised. The soldier stopped, his weapon trained on her chest, and for a moment the entire squad froze in surprise. "I'm Security Chief Martinez," she said, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her veins. "This station is under the protection of Earth Defense Command. You have 30 seconds to identify yourselves before I'm required to take defensive action." It was a bluff, and she knew it. Her weapon was no match for their advanced armor, and she was outnumbered 12-1. But Sarah had learned long ago that sometimes the only way to survive was to show strength when you had none. The lead soldier tilted his head, and when he spoke, his voice was filtered through the helmet's communication system, making it sound cold and mechanical. Sarah Martinez, age 42, 20 years of service, scheduled for retirement in 6 hours. The soldier paused, and Sarah could hear the smile in his voice even through the electronic distortion. "We've been waiting for you," the words hit Sarah like a physical blow. They knew her name, her age, her service record, even her retirement schedule. This was not a random attack or a desperate raid by outer colony rebels. This was personal, and it had been planned for a very long time. "What do you want?" Sarah asked, keeping her hands visible, but slowly shifting her weight to her back foot. If she was going to die tonight, she would not make it easy for them. The lead soldier gestured to his squad, and they immediately began setting up some kind of equipment in the corridor. Sarah watched as they deployed devices she had never seen before, creating what looked like a portable command center right in the middle of the carnage. 20 years ago, you were part of the security detail for Project Starfall, the soldier said, his filtered voice echoing off the metal walls. You saw things you were not supposed to see. You learned things you were not supposed to learn. Sarah's mind raced back through the decades. Project Starfall had been classified above her security level, but she remembered the late-night meetings, the sealed containers that arrived under heavy guard, the scientists who looked terrified of their own work. She had done her job, asked no questions, and filed no reports about the strange energy readings that had made her equipment malfunction for weeks afterward. "I never told anyone anything," Sarah said. "I follow my orders. I kept my mouth shut." "Yes, you did," the soldier agreed. "But your silence was not enough. Tonight, we complete what should have been finished 20 years ago." One of the other soldiers approached and whispered something to their leader. Sarah caught only fragments of the conversation, but she heard enough to make her blood run cold. They were not just here for her. They were here to destroy the entire station and everyone on it. The orbital defense station housed nearly 3,000 people. Engineers, scientists, support staff, security personnel, and their families. Many of them were civilians who had never held a weapon in their lives. Children lived here, attended school here, called this place home. "You can kill me," Sarah said, taking a step forward despite the weapons trained on her. "But leave the others out of this. Whatever happened with Project Starfall, they had nothing to do with it." The soldier's helmet display pulsed, and Sarah heard what might have been laughter. "Still playing the hero after all these years. Do you really think this is about justice? About tying up loose ends?" Another soldier approached, carrying a device that looked like a combination tablet and weapon. The display showed a three-dimensional map of the station, with red dots marking the locations of every living person aboard. Sarah's heart sank as she realized they had been tracking everyone from the moment they boarded. "This station sits at the crossroads of 3 major shipping lanes," the lead soldier continued. "Every supply convoy to the outer colonies passes within scanning range of your sensors. Every military ship, every diplomatic vessel, every piece of cargo that moves between the inner and outer systems is logged by your computers." Sarah began to understand. The orbital defense station was not just a military outpost. It was an intelligence-gathering hub, quietly monitoring everything that moved through this sector of space. The information stored in their computers would be worth billions to the right buyers or the wrong ones. "You're pirates," she said. "We prefer the term liberation specialists," the soldier replied. "And you, Sarah Martinez, are going to help us access your computer systems." Sarah almost laughed. "Almost. I'm a security guard. I don't have access to classified systems." "No, but you have something much more valuable." The soldier gestured to one of his team, who produced a small device from his equipment pack. "You have 20 years of trust from your fellow officers. 20 years of loyalty from the command staff. 20 years of being the person everyone turns to when they need help." The device in the soldier's hand was some kind of scanner. As Sarah watched, it projected a holographic display showing the station's communication network, with bright lines connecting every terminal, every workstation, every personal device. "Your colleagues are hiding throughout the station," the soldier said. "They trust you. They will open doors for you, share access codes with you, follow your orders, even in a crisis. All we need is for you to walk through the station, gather the people we need, and bring them to us. And if I refuse? The soldier's helmet display flashed, and suddenly, every screen in the corridor lit up with live video feeds from throughout the station. Sarah saw her friends and co-workers huddled in storage closets, barricaded in offices, crammed into emergency shelters. She saw families with young children, their faces white with terror. "If you refuse," the soldier said softly, "we will visit each of them personally. We will take our time. And when we're finished with this station, there will be nothing left but empty corridors and silent computers." Sarah stared at the screens, watching people she had known for decades, trying to stay hidden, trying to stay alive. Some of them were little more than children themselves, fresh recruits who had joined the station security force hoping for a quiet career and a steady paycheck. "How do I know you'll keep your word?" she asked. "How do I know you won't kill them anyway once you get what you want?" "You don't," the soldier admitted. "But right now, cooperation is their only chance. And yours." Sarah closed her eyes and made the hardest decision of her life. When she opened them again, her voice was steady and her hands had stopped shaking. "What do you need me to do?" The next 3 hours became a nightmare that Sarah knew would haunt her for the rest of her life, however long that might be. The soldiers had given her a communication device that looked identical to her standard security radio, but she could feel their eyes on her through every corridor, watching her every move through hidden cameras they had installed throughout the station. Her first stop was the command center on level 5. Sarah used her security codes to enter, knowing that each access would be logged and that somewhere the soldiers were recording everything. Commander Hayes was inside with 3 junior officers, all of them armed and positioned behind makeshift barriers. "Sarah," Hayes called out when he saw her. "Thank God you're alive. We've lost contact with most of the security teams. What's the situation on the lower levels?" Sarah looked at her old friend and felt something break inside her chest. Hayes had been her mentor when she first joined the station security force. He had taught her everything about reading people, about knowing when someone was lying or holding back information. Now she was about to lie to him in a way that might get him killed. "It's bad," she said, and that much was true. Unknown hostiles with advanced equipment, military training. They're systematically clearing each level. Hayes nodded grimly. "We've managed to lock down the main computer core, but they'll break through eventually. We need to evacuate the civilian areas and get a distress signal to Earth Defense Command." "The communication array has been compromised," Sarah said, following the script the soldiers had given her. "But I know a way to send a signal through the backup systems. I need access to the secondary command station on level 12. It was a lie, but it was the kind of technical solution that Hayes would expect from someone with her experience. The secondary command station was exactly where the soldiers wanted the senior staff to gather, where they could be captured or eliminated in one efficient operation. "That's right through the middle of the hostile zone," Hayes said. "Too dangerous." "Not if we move quietly and use the maintenance tunnels," Sarah replied. "I know the station better than anyone. I can get us there safely." She watched Hayes consider the options, saw him weigh the risks against the potential to save everyone on the station. It was exactly the kind of desperate gamble that he would normally approve, exactly the sort of mission he would trust Sarah to execute. "All right," he said finally, "but we do this my way. Full tactical gear, weapons ready, and if we run into resistance, we fall back immediately." Sarah nodded and helped them gather their equipment. As they prepared to leave the command center, she activated the communication device the soldiers had given her and sent a coded signal. Somewhere in the station, the soldiers would know that their plan was working. The journey through the maintenance tunnels was a horror of tension and barely controlled terror. Sarah led the way through narrow passages between the station's massive support systems, her flashlight cutting through the darkness ahead of them. Behind her, Hayes and his officers moved with professional caution, their weapons trained on every corner, every potential ambush point. Sarah had walked these tunnels 1,000 times during routine inspections, but tonight they felt different. Tonight, they felt like a trap that was slowly closing around people she cared about, and she was the one leading them into it. They reached the access hatch for level 12 without encountering any hostiles, which should have been their first warning. The soldiers were too professional to leave their flanks unguarded unless they wanted someone to pass through undetected. Wait, Hayes whispered as Sarah reached for the hatch release. This feels wrong. If they're as organized as you say, they should have sentries in these tunnels. Sarah felt sweat beading on her forehead, despite the cool air in the maintenance shaft. Hayes was too good at his job, too experienced to miss the signs that something was not right. If he started asking the wrong questions, if he began to suspect that their mission was not what it seemed, the soldiers would have no choice but to eliminate all of them immediately. Maybe we got lucky, she said, hating herself for the words. Maybe they don't know about the maintenance access points. Hayes stared at her for a long moment, and Sarah could see the suspicion growing in his eyes. 20 years of working together had made him an expert at reading her expressions, her body language, her voice. He knew when she was holding something back. "Sarah," he said quietly, "is there something you need to tell me?" Before she could answer, the hatch above them burst open and armed figures dropped into the tunnel. The soldiers had been waiting, positioned perfectly to capture Hayes and his officers without firing a shot. In seconds, the narrow maintenance shaft was filled with armed figures in dark armor, their weapons trained on the security team. Hayes spun toward Sarah, his face a mixture of betrayal and understanding. "How long?" he asked. "Since the beginning," Sarah whispered. "I'm sorry. They have hostages. They have everyone." One of the soldiers stepped forward and gestured for Hayes to drop his weapon. The commander looked at Sarah one last time, then carefully placed his sidearm on the tunnel floor. "You always were too good at your job," he said softly. "I should have seen it coming." The soldiers efficiently secured Hayes and his officers, using restraints that looked more like medical equipment than traditional handcuffs. As they prepared to move the prisoners, the lead soldier approached Sarah. "Excellent work," he said. "Phase 2 begins now." Sarah looked at Hayes, saw the disappointment in his eyes, and felt the last piece of her soul break apart. "What's Phase 2? "We're going to visit the civilian shelters," the soldier replied. "And you're going to help us convince everyone to come out peacefully." The civilian shelters were located on the upper levels of the station, areas designed to house families during emergencies. They were supposed to be the safest places on the entire station, protected by multiple security barriers and equipped with independent life support systems. As they moved through the corridors toward the first shelter, Sarah could hear children crying through the reinforced doors. Families were huddled together inside, waiting for someone to tell them that the danger had passed, that they could go home to their normal lives. Instead, they were going to see Sarah's face in the doorway, and they were going to trust her because she had never given them reason to do otherwise. They would open the doors for her, follow her instructions, and walk directly into the hands of the soldiers who planned to use them as leverage. Sarah stopped walking. "I can't do this," she said. The lead soldier turned back toward her, his helmet display pulsing with what might have been amusement. "Of course you can. You come this far." "Not the children," Sarah said. "Please. Take whatever you want from the computers, take the intelligence data, take the whole station if you have to. But leave the children alone." "The children are our insurance policy," the soldier replied. "Their parents will be much more cooperative when their safety is at stake." Sarah looked down the corridor toward the shelter doors, knowing that behind each one were people who trusted her, people who believed she would protect them. For 20 years, she had taken an oath to serve and protect everyone on this station. Tonight, she had broken that oath in ways that could never be forgiven. But maybe, just maybe, it was not too late to remember who she was supposed to be. Sarah stood in the corridor outside the first civilian shelter, her hand resting on the communication panel that would open the doors. Inside, she could hear the muffled voices of families trying to keep their children calm, parents whispering reassurances they probably did not believe themselves. The lead soldier stood behind her, close enough that she could feel the heat from his armor's power systems. Open the door, Sarah. Tell them you're here to evacuate them to a safer location. Tell them you need them to move quickly and quietly. Sarah's finger hovered over the access button. 20 years of training told her to follow orders, to find a way to survive, to protect as many people as possible, even if it meant sacrificing a few. But 20 years of protecting these same people told her something else entirely. No, she said quietly. The soldier's helmet display flashed brighter. I beg your pardon? Sarah turned around to face him directly. I said no. I won't help you hurt innocent people. Then, you've just signed their death warrant, the soldier replied. His team began moving into position around the shelter doors, their weapons charging with a low humming sound that made Sarah's skin crawl. Wait, she said quickly. There's another way. The soldier paused, his head tilted in what might have been curiosity. I'm listening. Sarah took a deep breath and played the only card she had left. You said this was about Project Starfall, about what I saw 20 years ago. What if I told you that the real secret isn't in the station's computer systems? Go on. The data you're looking for, the information that's worth all this trouble, it's not stored electronically. It's biological. Sarah watched the soldier's body language, looking for any sign that her desperate bluff was working. The scientists on Project Starfall weren't just studying alien technology. They were trying to replicate it, to create human-alien hybrids that could interface with the technology directly. It was a complete fabrication, built from fragments of conversation she had overheard decades ago and her own imagination. But Sarah had learned long ago that the best lies were built on small truths, and there had definitely been something biological about the Project Starfall research. The test subjects, she continued, were volunteers from the station security force, including me. The soldiers stepped closer, and Sarah could see her own reflection in his helmet's display. You're saying you're one of these hybrids? I'm saying that if you want access to the alien technology, if you want to understand what Project Starfall really accomplished, you need me alive and cooperative. And the only way to get my cooperation is to let these people go. For a long moment, the corridor was silent except for the distant humming of the station's life support systems. Sarah could see the soldier considering her words, weighing the possibility that she was telling the truth against the certainty of the mission he had been sent to complete. Finally, he activated his communication system and spoke in a language Sarah had never heard before. The sounds were harsh and angular, definitely not human in origin. When he finished, he looked back at Sarah with what might have been respect. Clever, he said, but ultimately pointless. Before Sarah could react, one of the other soldiers grabbed her arm and pressed a small device against her neck. She felt a sharp pain, followed by a strange tingling sensation that spread through her entire body. Bioscanner, the lead soldier explained. If you really were a hybrid, we would see genetic markers, enhanced neural pathways, traces of alien DNA integration. Instead, we see exactly what we expected to see. A normal human woman who is very good at lying under pressure. Sarah felt her last hope crumble. The scanner results appeared on the soldier's helmet display, and she could see the readout clearly showing normal human biology, no enhancements, no alien modifications of any kind. However, the soldier continued, your willingness to sacrifice yourself for others is exactly what we need for the final phase of our mission. What final phase? The soldier gestured to his team, and they began setting up equipment Sarah had not seen before. Devices that looked like a cross between computers and weapons connected by cables that seemed to pulse with their own internal light. The real treasure on this station is not information, he said. It's people. Specifically, people who can make moral choices under extreme pressure. People who will sacrifice themselves to protect others. People who have spent their entire lives learning to serve something greater than themselves. Sarah watched in growing horror as the soldiers connected their equipment to the station's communication systems. Whatever they were planning, it would affect the entire station, possibly everyone on it. You're not pirates, she said, understanding finally dawning. You're not even human. The soldier reached up and removed his helmet, revealing a face that was almost human, but not quite. The proportions were slightly wrong, the features too sharp, the eyes too large, and filled with a cold intelligence that felt utterly alien. "We are what humanity will become," he said in a voice that no longer needed electronic filtering. "But the transformation requires specific genetic material, specific neural patterns, specific psychological profiles. We cannot simply take what we need. It must be given freely, sacrificed willingly." "The people on this station," Sarah whispered, "have spent their lives learning to put others before themselves. Their neural patterns, their psychological profiles, their genetic predisposition towards self-sacrifice, all of it will be invaluable in creating the next generation of our species." The equipment the soldiers had been setting up was not weapons at all. It was some kind of scanning and harvesting system designed to analyze and extract the very qualities that made these people who they were. But the process only works if the subjects choose to participate, the alien continued. If they make the decision voluntarily to give their lives for something they believe in. "That's where you come in, Sarah Martinez. You're going to help us convince them." Sarah looked at the alien's too sharp features, at the equipment that hummed with malevolent purpose, at the corridor full of armed soldiers who were not soldiers at all, but something far worse. "And if I refuse, then we will take what we need by force," the alien replied. "The neural patterns will be less pure, the genetic material less useful, but we will still accomplish our goal. The only difference is that instead of a quick, painless process, everyone on this station will experience several hours of unimaginable agony before they die." Sarah closed her eyes and thought about the children hiding in the shelters, about Commander Hayes and his team, about all the people who had trusted her to keep them safe. When she opened her eyes again, she was no longer the same person who had started her last shift 8 hours earlier. "What do you need me to do?" she asked, but her voice carried something the alien had not heard before, something that made him take a step back and regard her with new interest. It was the voice of someone who had finally stopped being afraid. What the aliens had not counted on was that Sarah Martinez had spent 20 years learning every system on the orbital defense station, including some that were not in any official manual. What they definitely had not counted on was the emergency beacon she had activated hours earlier, which had been broadcasting a continuous distress signal to Earth Defense Command on a frequency that their equipment could not detect. And what they absolutely, positively had never imagined was that Earth Defense Command had dispatched a Navy SEAL team aboard a stealth ship that had been tracking their vessel since it first entered the solar system. Sarah played her part perfectly, leading the aliens through the station while their equipment scanned and cataloged every person they encountered. She opened doors, convinced people to cooperate, and watched as the aliens began their harvesting process on the volunteer subjects they had gathered. But Sarah had also been leaving small signs along the way, marks that would be invisible to alien eyes, but immediately recognizable to any Earth military personnel who might be conducting a rescue operation. Scratches on walls that indicated enemy positions, hand signals caught by security cameras that showed the locations of hostages, and a trail of breadcrumbs that would lead any rescue team directly to the alien command center. The SEALs came through the maintenance tunnels at exactly 0347 hours, moving with the kind of silent precision that made the alien soldiers look like amateurs by comparison. Sarah heard them before she saw them, recognized the barely audible sounds of professional soldiers who had trained for exactly this kind of operation. When the shooting started, it lasted exactly 43 seconds. The aliens had advanced weapons and sophisticated armor, but they had never faced opponents who had spent their entire military careers learning to fight enemies with superior technology. The SEALs had trained for alien contact scenarios, studied every piece of recovered technology, and developed tactics specifically designed to neutralize technologically advanced threats. More importantly, they were fighting to protect their own people, and that gave them an edge that no amount of alien technology could overcome. Sarah found herself pressed against a wall as energy beams and projectile weapons filled the air around her. The alien leader, the one who had removed his helmet and shown her his true face, was shouting orders in his harsh native language while his soldiers tried desperately to establish defensive positions. But the SEALs were everywhere and nowhere, appearing from ventilation shafts and maintenance hatches, striking with overwhelming force, and then vanishing before the aliens could respond. Their weapons were designed specifically to penetrate alien armor, their tactics honed through years of simulated combat against superior opponents. In the end, it was not even close. When the gunfire stopped, 12 alien soldiers lay dead or unconscious throughout the command center. Their equipment had been destroyed, their harvesting process interrupted, and their ship had been captured by additional SEAL teams who had boarded it while the main assault was taking place. Sarah stood in the sudden silence, her ears ringing from the weapon's fire, her hands shaking as the adrenaline finally began to fade. Around her, the SEALs were efficiently securing the area, checking on hostages, and beginning the process of collecting alien technology for analysis. The SEAL team leader, a man whose face was painted with camouflage patterns that made him look like something out of a nightmare, approached Sarah with his weapon lowered but ready. "Security Chief Martinez?" he asked. "Just Sarah," she replied. "I am retiring. Today, in fact." The SEAL smiled, and it transformed his painted face into something almost human again. "Ma'am, with all due respect, after what you did tonight, I don't think retirement is going to stick." "What I did tonight was betray my friends and co-workers," Sarah said bitterly. "I led them into traps. I helped aliens capture them. I violated every oath I ever took as a security officer." The SEAL team leader looked around the command center, taking in the destroyed alien equipment, the rescued hostages, the evidence of a threat that had been neutralized before it could spread beyond the station. "What you did tonight," he said firmly, "was buy us time. Your distress beacon gave us 8 hours to track their ship and plan a rescue operation. Your cooperation kept the hostages alive long enough for us to reach them. Your trail markers guided us directly to their command center." Sarah stared at him. "You knew. We've been monitoring their communications since we boarded the station," the SEAL explained. "Every conversation, every order, every threat. We knew you were being coerced. We knew you were trying to protect people. And we knew you were leading them exactly where we needed them to be." Another SEAL approached, carrying a tablet, displaying the results of their operation. "All hostages secure. No casualties among station personnel. Alien vessel captured intact with full crew. We've recovered technology that's going to keep our scientists busy for the next 20 years. The team leader nodded, then looked back at Sarah. "Chief Martinez, on behalf of the United States Navy and Earth Defense Command, I want to thank you for your service tonight and for your 20 years of dedication to protecting humanity's interests in space." As he spoke, the rest of the SEAL team formed up behind him. In perfect unison, they came to attention and rendered a formal military salute to the security officer who had spent her last shift saving everyone she had sworn to protect. Sarah felt tears streaming down her face as she returned the salute, her hands steady despite everything she had been through. Around them, the station's crew was beginning to emerge from hiding. Families were being reunited, and normal life was slowly returning to the corridors that had been a battleground just moments before. Commander Hayes approached, his face showing a mixture of relief and admiration. "So," he said, "still planning to retire?" Sarah looked around at the faces of people she had known for decades, people who were alive because of choices she had made in the darkest hours of her life. She thought about the alien threat that was still out there somewhere, about the technology they had tried to steal, about the ongoing mission to protect humanity from enemies they had not even imagined. "You know what?" she said, finally allowing herself to smile. "I think I might stick around for a few more years." The SEAL team leader grinned. "Earth Defense Command is going to want to debrief you extensively. What you learned about alien psychology, their tactics, their technology, it's all invaluable intelligence." "And then?" Sarah asked. "Then, we're going to offer you a job," he replied, "leading the new Alien Contact Security Division, preparing humanity for the next time something like this happens, because we all know there's going to be a next time." Sarah Martinez looked around the command center one last time, at the evidence of humanity's first real contact with a hostile alien species, at the proof that people could choose to do the right thing even when it seemed impossible. "When do I start?" she asked. The Navy SEALs were still standing at attention, their salute a recognition not just of her courage during the crisis, but of her 20 years of service and her willingness to continue serving when her people needed her most. It was, Sarah realized, exactly the retirement party she had always wanted, even if she had not known at the time.